The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. On a Sabbath, Jesus went to dine at the home of one of the leading Pharisees, and the people there were observing him carefully. He told a parable to those who had been invited, noticing how they were choosing the places of honor at the table. When you are invited by someone to a wedding banquet, do not recline at table in the place of honor. A more distinguished guest than you may have been invited by him, and the host who invited both of you may approach you and say, "Give your place to this man." And then you would proceed with embarrassment to take the lowest place. Rather, when you are invited, go and take the lowest place, so that when the host comes to you, he may say, "My friend, move up to a higher position." Then you will enjoy the esteem of your companions at the table. For everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, but the one who humbles himself will be exalted. Then he said to the host who invited him, "When you hold a lunch or a dinner, do not invite your friends or your brothers or your relatives or your wealthy neighbors, in case that they may invite you back and you will have repayment. Rather, when you hold a banquet, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, and the blind. Blessed indeed will you be because of their inability to repay you, for you will be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
Usually our webcam is at the 7 o'clock Mass, so I thought I avoided the webcam. Hi guys out in the web audience. Love the web audience. Hate being on TV. And you might think that's because I'm kind of humble, really. No, that's because I'm kind of self-conscious, and I look okay, Jesus actually gives us a real great lesson in humility today. And we try to do a 3-point homily, but this is actually going to be a 4-point homily. 2 to kind of help us define humility, and 2 to try to apply it. Oftentimes you can define humility or define a word by its opposites. And the opposite of humility is pride. Most people would say pride. Pride is that vain glory, that self-absorption that so often creeps into our lives. But in our modern use of the word pride, there are some good ways we can use pride. Craftsmanship instills pride. Craftsmen have real pride in their work, ownership or stewardship, a wonder and awe at what is created. I know I'm proud to be a member of St. Mary's, not in a way of self-absorption or, I'm so special. A real gratitude, a real awe at what we have as a community of faith. So pride can sometimes be used in a good way. But I think we know the opposite of humility is pride in that bad way, that self-absorption, that vain glory. And I propose another opposite for us to ponder. The opposite of humility is entitlement. It's that feeling that, we deserve it. The world owes us something, or you guys owe me something, or God owes me something. God doesn't owe me anything. The world doesn't owe me anything. You don't owe me anything. And I hope I'm humble enough to recognize that. We can also define a word by its root, by what the word was originally meant to be done. And the root of the word humility comes from a Latin word, humilis. You might recognize its noun form. That's the adjective. The noun is humus, which is earth or soil, the ground we stand on. Humility is being of the earth or having our feet on the ground. I remember a definition we used to use way back when I was in university, a little prayer group we had, and they said, humility is knowing who you are. It's not that false sense of, I gotta beat the crud out of myself, and, that's humility, or I gotta put myself down. No, that's kind of a false humility. Humility is knowing that we are God's beloved, and He has created us with wonder and awe and all that goodness. But we're not God. Humility is knowing that we have limitations and we have things that we can't do. We have gifts and wonder and awe in our midst. Humility is being that grounded person, being just a down-to-earth folk, being ourselves with all our gifts and all our limitations. Jesus applies this sense of humility in the parable in, I think, 2 ways: to the guests and to the hosts. From the point of view of the guest, we have to understand that Jesus is inviting. He uses this image of the wedding banquet, which is the image of the eschatological gathering of God's people. None of us have the wealth or the power or the stuff to invite ourselves to that banquet. We can't buy a seat for heaven. The Lord invites us. And so from the point of view of the guest, we have to keep that always in mind. We have to know our place. We're going through a process of trying to recruit Eucharistic ministers now, and the most common response, I say, would you like to be an extraordinary minister of the Eucharist? And they'll say, I don't feel like I'm worthy. And I go, good, you're not. None of us are worthy. But God invites you. God says, share in my meal. Be present. Not because we deserve it, not because we can buy it, not because we're entitled to it, but because God loves us, because God chooses us, because God shares with us His divine life. He calls us to the banquet feast. What a humble and amazing gift that is. But we can also apply humility to the host. If we know how humble it is to be invited to this great gift that God gives us, can we in turn be humble in who we invite into our lives, into our parish, into our little worlds? As God invites us, so must we put forward the invitation in humility. Jesus says, not simply the ones we like, although I don't know if all of our family members fall into the like category. We have to invite the poor and the crippled, the lame, the blind. I was going through church and I clean up the church every so often, just the entranceways. People love to put stuff out. Not all the stuff that gets put out is what I want to put out. But there's a card in the church. You got to find one of these cards and take it home. It's the St. Vincent de Paul cards. And it has this phrase in big bold letters, you are a servant of the poor. I think that's so true. We are called to serve them. And they will be amazing masters for us. They own our hearts in some ways that are not so great. But with love and humility, we will serve them. Humility calls us to largesse. It calls us to kindness and goodness. It calls us to stand on the ground of love, empowered with the very essence of love, God's love flowing through our actions, to live out of love. And I think that's the good news. Humbled as guests, humbled as hosts, we get to live in God's love. We get to walk humbly with our God.
Right from that moment that I had to make you mine, 'cause my God has got a hold